Hi, I'm Nichelle Nichols, but I still feel a little bit like Lieutenant Uhura on the Starship Enterprise. You know, now there's a 20th century Enterprise. Scientists and engineers, men and women of all races, into space, just like the astronaut crew on the Starship Enterprise. So that is why I'm speaking to the whole family of humankind, minorities and women alike. If you qualify and would like to be an astronaut, now is the time. This is your NASA, a space agency embarked on a mission to improve the quality of life on planet Earth right now.
Hello, you beautiful nerds. So I don't think that it's a hot take to say that the Star Trek movies don't really feel like Star Trek. They're fun, especially the first Chris Pine Star Trek, and even though Beyond was mostly well received, it seemed like, especially after a few seasons of Discovery, the consensus of a lot of diehards was that Star Trek was veering more and more away from what so many people loved about Trek shows like TOS, TNG, DS9, and Voyager. Voyager doesn't get a fun initialization. I don't even think Discovery is that bad. I mean, it's not great, but I feel like the vitrolic response to that series is more of a collective response to all of the recent Star Trek shit. Not only has Star Trek been less about philosophy and more about action, but also like Star Wars, it seems like they're trying a similar business model of investing time in streaming series. But in the midst of a hysterically terrible year, there was a series that made me fall back in love with the Federation. Just like how you fell in love with this channel and decided to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get updates on new videos. Remember when you did that? When you subscribed? It's just like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about what we're talking about. So grab a bottle of Romulan whiskey and let's have a quick chat about... So I do love Star Trek, but my knowledge isn't quite as annoyingly encyclopedic as it is for, say, Star Wars. I know some shit, but not a bunch. I watched TNG with my mom, and we owned one of those VHS board game things that we played a lot.
Are we sure this is a game and not some art film?
But I wasn't obsessed with Trek like I was other stuff. But when I heard that a Rick and Morty alum had developed an animated series set in the Star Trek world, I was kinda curious. I kinda just threw it on because I was literally consuming everything in excess in 2020. Content, alcohol, food, alcohol, weed. Did I mention alcohol? But turns out this show is kind of made for me. The writing and animation is right up my alley, so it didn't take long for Lower Decks to hook me at all. Despite the show being a straight up comedy, it fits right in with the Trek lore. The aspect of the show that works so well is the perspective of the main characters. The core concept is seeing how the non-high ranking characters live on a starship where crazy shit happens literally every week. We've seen Picard and Kirk and Cisco go on their adventures, and we love them for that. And it only stands to reason that the people who live in this universe would equally see them as celebrities. So when you hear them mention someone like Janeway or Q or even fucking Miles O'Brien, you kind of have the same fanatic energy that the Lower Deckers do. Not only are the references usually hilarious, it makes the world feel more real and true to the lore because it includes everything amazing and ridiculous about Trek. I mean, there's a damn Cation on the ship. There are fucking dolphins. Remember how dolphins and fucking whales are members of Starfleet? Remember that weird shit? This is the perfect show for anyone feeling even the tiniest bit nostalgic for Star Trek. This kind of referential humor sounds like it would be infuriating, but the show is much more than just references to other Trek shit. Like if it were just the equivalent of a Family Guy Star Trek special, but like 12 episodes long, it would probably get really old really fast. But this show feels more Justin Roiland than Seth MacFarlane. The animation for Lower Decks even looks a lot like Rick and Morty. It is a comedy, but there are still some really great action sequences. It's not like it happens every episode. They even mention that there are some ships that explore, and then there are other ships that invite danger and adventure. Cerritos is somewhere in the middle, but definitely leans more towards the exploration. It's also no small thing having a black woman as the lead. I mean, she's technically the co-lead with Bradley Baby Quay Boimler, but the story is really about Beckett's journey. She's an ensign with the potential to be at Kirk level. In fact, she's a lot like young Kirk. She's arrogant, has a devil-may-care attitude, and has skills and experience way beyond her station.
One time, I got trapped in a sentient cave for weeks. You ever been trapped in a sentient cave? That's a dark place that knows things.
But she can't seem to get out of her own way. We hear quick mentions of Beckett's past.
Mariner, this makes us even.
You know Riker?
Yeah, who do you think hooked me up with all my contraband?
Being a total badass when she served on like 50 lead other ships. But unlike Kirk, you get the sense that she has no interest in being a Starfleet commander. And that is no small part due to the relationship she has with her mother, who is the captain of the Cerritos. Side note, I always trip out when I see an LA street or city named after a Starfleet ship. Like, I don't know why, but that's pretty cool to me. Is that what California class means? I don't know. I'm a bad Trek fan. Let me know in the comments. Again, she's a lot like Kirk, but she's got a lot of Kumar energy to her as well.
And I really don't have a desire to go to med school.
But you have perfect MCAT scores.
Yeah, just because you're hung like a moose doesn't mean you gotta do porn.
She's the daughter of a captain and an admiral, but she actively fights against her nepotism by staying on the lower decks of a Starfleet ship. Not even one of the good ones. It's not like she's on the D or anything.
Phrasing?
But she has so much insecurity about whether she deserves to be anything more than an ensign because the status of her parents is looming over her like a shadow.
Oh, come on, Mariner. The captain's your mom, your dad's an admiral. You're basically Starfleet royalty. I mean, how cool is that?
Shut the up right now, Boimler. Shut your mouth.
Watching Lower Decks is like taking a leisurely swim through a vast ocean that is the Trek lore. And after finishing a couple of seasons, it makes you want to dive all the way in. I mean, I started rewatching TNG and TOS.
TOS?
It's what I call the 2260s. Stands for those old scientists.
I never really watched DS9, but now it's my fucking jam. Started rewatching the movies and shit. I mean, I was going in. This sounds like a commercial for Paramount Plus, but I swear it's not. But if you're handing out checks, CBS, I can send you my Venmo information. Also, this is not a commercial for Venmo, but if you're handing out checks Venmo, I can send you. Anyway, as much as my Starfleet nostalgia had been reawakened, I was still hesitant about watching new Trek. I loved Lower Decks, but Prodigy looked like Star Trek's response to Rebels, which I do not like. And Strange New Worlds is a spinoff of Discovery, which, I mean, we talked about that. It's not very good. But after I heard enough people say that this new show was way more enjoyable than Discovery, I had to see what all the fuss was about.
I love this job.
By the time this show was announced, I had already fallen so far behind on Discovery, I had all but given up on it. So I didn't see the episode where Pike and the rest of the crew guest starred, but when I heard that they were developing a show based on the characters from that episode, let's just say I was not optimistic. I was like, there is no way that a Discovery spinoff not starring Michelle Yeoh is something that I want to watch. But that was an opinion of a dum-dum. That was a dum-dum you just heard. This show is just good, man. It's just like really good. After I finished the first season, I immediately started watching it again from the first episode because I was baffled. How did they manage to do what others have failed to do? How did they make it feel like old school Trek? As much as I love Lower Decks and how much it does feel like we're in the world of Trek, there's something to be said about the pacing and thematic narrative of most of the older Star Trek shows. SNW chooses to make the stories of each episode pretty concise. There are a few plot points that carry over from episode to episode, like Dr. Mbega's sick daughter, Number One's lineage, or Leanne's upbringing, but the entire season isn't hanging on the answers to those questions. Arguably, the biggest story arc is Pike coming to terms with his own tragic future, but that doesn't end up becoming what the show is about. When we get episodes that push his story forward, it's just as interesting as an episode about Spock, or Uhura, or Hemmer, or the fucking Gorn. Yeah, they made the Gorn fucking cool. Or terrifying, however you want to look at it. The show can be a swashbuckling adventure one episode and a heartfelt think piece the next, and it all has the same vibe. It's kind of hard to pick a favorite character on the show. Bruce Horak as Hemmer is just, I mean, everything he says is gold. He definitely has the best lines in the first season. Celia Rose Gooding and Jess Bush are also surprisingly wonderful. Anson Mount and Rebecca Romaine have great chemistry together. They're the perfect captain and Number One duo. Ethan Peck is somehow a better Spock than Zachary Quinto, but I do feel like Christina Chong is asked to do the most on the show. She gets to be serious and do the action stuff, but she also gets to be funny. This montage with Una is one of my favorites.
Flavor check.
Spinman again.
Wow.
And then when the show reveals some of her backstory, you can not only see the fear and trauma in her face, you can hear it in her voice. You can feel it in her demeanor. I love every stinking Starfleet member on this ship, but I have to name Christina Chong my MVP of the first season. It's funny, the only actor I don't really care for is pretty important to Star Trek, but isn't really important to this show. So I'm kind of whatever about it. It's fucking Kirk, man. That dude is dull as shit. Not Dan Jeanette. He plays James Kirk's brother. Now Dan Jeanette, he is only in the show for like a total of 8 minutes, but he is so much more fun to watch than this guy. But yeah, I get zero Jim Kirk vibes from this guy.
I think you might see him back next year as the younger version.
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
The fundamental difference between Star Wars and Star Trek is that Star Wars is a dystopian fantasy and Star Trek is a utopian sci-fi. Star Wars tries to cultivate that fantastical world that exists outside of the one that we live in. Their characters don't have the full weight of US or world history in their rear view motivating their culture. But because of the sheer idea of Star Trek, their creators have always been conscious of diversity and inclusion. Now to be clear, there was some racist and sexist shit going on behind the scenes. I mean, why do you think that Tasha Yar and Dr. Crusher left TNG so quick? But the representation on screen was monumental.
I told Gene after the end of the first season that I would not be returning to the show, but I didn't know that meeting a Star Trek fan would change my life. I was told that fan wanted to meet me, and I turned and looked into the face of Dr. Martin Luther King. I was breathless.
Martin Luther King loves Star Trek. And he's like, you are the only Black woman on television who doesn't play a servant. You're the only person out there providing hope to Black people that there's a future where maybe they won't be seen as less than and they'll be seen as equals. If you leave, this one image that children have of a Black woman as an equal will just disappear from television. And she's like, well, that's a lot. That's like a lot. That's a lot on my shoulders. Can you chill? And he's like, no, I'm Martin Luther King. I have no chill.
Say what you want about woke culture, but I'd much rather live in today's climate than having to deal with the bullshit that we used to. Most of the time when people say this is an important film or entertainment is important, I'm like, nah, no it's not. But this is one of those few times when it really was important and really meant something to a lot of people. And Star Trek continues to mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Not only because of the fun adventures, weird aliens, and kooky characters, but because of what it represents. To thematically, emotionally, intellectually, and boldly go where no one has gone before. My ranking, I love it. I love them both. Okay, that is all for this review. But what do you guys think of Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks? Do you think Star Trek is headed in the right direction? Do you even watch any Star Trek? And who's your favorite Starfleet captain? Is it Sisko? Is it Kirk? Is it John Archer? I'm kidding. No, Archer is literally no one's favorite. But whomever they may be, please leave in the comments which captain you'd traverse the stars with. Or at the very least, shoot the shit over a glass of Saurian brandy. And don't forget to check out the podcast where we'll be talking about Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, and a bunch of other crazy nerd shit. But until then, stay safe, my little red shirts, and may the Force be with you.